Hello, this is Eric of NotBIOS, and today I'm reviewing the Corsair 2000D Airflow computer case. This was included. This is some of the hardware, and the case itself is very unique airflow-wise, and it has a lot of magnets that make it attach together. Fairly tall, uses no riser cable, which means we don't have to worry about finding a new standard riser cable as our GPUs are improved. It just works. And that is what I like. This can fit up to an SFXL, larger, longer SFX power supply. That's what the FXL long stands for. And we have plenty of room for components. Now let's get started. For this case, you might know there's RGB fans you get for it, but I'm using these RGB fans reviewed on this channel rather than the ones that come with this particular computer case, because we can get our own, and this does look freaking awesome now, doesn't it? Probably even better than the ones that are included with this computer case, and they're quite silent. Included with this case, we have tie wraps for tightening up your cables. We also have a bunch of different screws. Here's one mounting screw of some sort. We also have a bunch more screws that are also included, including fan screws right here. In the back, we're going to see there's a filter. And this filter can be taken out. It's also magnetic. And here we go. So if you want to allow more airflow out the back end, we could always take that out for whatever your pleasure is. Now, to put it back in, we're going to simply slide it back down and put it through those grooves on the bottom. From the top of the case itself, I can also see there's the Velcro, which holds the power supply up here and holds that cable. So your power supply back end with the power switch is going to be right up here. It's mounting for an SSD type drive or a laptop size storage drive and not a regular spinny hard drive. Thumb screws right here. They stay in place. That's a beautiful thing. And we don't pull it out this way. We have to go out the back and push out. So I take, say, these little tabs at the back end, and I'd pull that outwards. There we go. And to put it back in, we have to be mindful of these little things here to go in the holes correctly. And this goes in little grooves on the case itself. Let's take a look closer. Here we have our opening of this particular case. Let's see some more details. Right here is our power supply mounting. And behind that, I can see a bracket that has screw holes. Can we see that? The screw holes right there. And those are for an SSD to be installed on the other side. Pretty cool. On the case itself, we have a USB Type-C connection that goes to the front of the case to your motherboard, if your motherboard has that connector. And we have a USB 3.0 version that goes to the motherboard itself to the front of the case. And let's see what else we have. We have an audio port connection that goes to your motherboard and connects to the front. We also have our regular connections to the motherboard, such as our power switch, which can be found right in here. We also have our power cable right here connected together. It's angled, kind of nice to have that, which allows it to go from the top of the case and all the way down. Shifting to the other side, let's take out these thumb screws, or say loosen them off because they don't come out, and that's perfect. You're not going to lose it. And again, going to pull those tabs. And voila. Here we have a radiator mount. We can actually put fans that are 120mm or 240mm. That's pretty cool. So let me grab a couple fans to show you. Here I have Bequiet Lightwing fans. These are 140mm, this particular one. And we can see it lines up. Here we have our Thermalright SWA fans. And this is the EX120. And of course I reviewed both these on this channel. And this is the one I showed you at the beginning of this video, where you can replace the fan blades to blow outwards or inwards. Cool stuff. Now this fan can't be controlled through your motherboard. You have to go through the software that's included with this. I'm going to find some other fans to see if there's ones that I don't need a case modification that are better choice for this case. The reason it's going to be changed is because I cannot fit all three due to the header getting in the way of the case. We have some fancy new case fans coming in. In fact, I have 3 different RGB case fans coming in for review. So watch for that. When you connect the fans up here or radiator, you're going to reduce the amount of space for a heatsink. But if you have a radiator, generally you're not going to need a heatsink, but your fan does take up space where your motherboard is installed at the back end of this case. Here we can see our SSD drive slot, and we have a thumb screw to remove this. So we can loosen it off and install our SSD, which I happen to have one to install on this particular case. And for our graphics card, we also have some more thumb screws at the bottom of the case right here, 3 slots. Any bigger than that, you're not going to be able to fit your GPU. Not many GPUs are bigger than 3 slots, mind you. In terms of graphics card size, for that 3 slots, we have a maximum of 6.5 centimeters, and that'll put you right against the case side. In terms of length, we have a maximum of 14 inches or 355 millimeters max length. In terms of max depth, 5 3/4 inch or 14.5 or 145 millimeters this way out. In order to fold open this case, we need to remove these 2 screws here. So if we need to install fans or a radiator, we can do so, or even our motherboard, because that's where our standoffs are inside here. And luckily that process is quite fast. And not only that, I thought this would fold open. It comes off like such. Now, how about our motherboard and everything else? Well, here we can see our pins nice and clear for doing our motherboard. Our power supply cables will go down here. Now, looking at the bottom, do we see anything special? We see big feet. That gives it some standoff. We can see some venting here. And this is basically where our I/O, our devices are going to be connected. So we have access right here. We can pull the tab right here and remove this. And this allows us to move cables through the bottom and out the back. Smart design this way. And to put it back, it's fairly simple. Once we line up our front corner, let's do that again. Once we line up this little tab on the front, we stick it in the hole and just lay it down, and it's that simple. The computer that's laying down here is the one I'm replacing. Right now it's kind of in pieces right now. It's going somewhere else and out of here. This particular case is the Fractal Torrent Nano ITX case. This one is also an ITX case, but a lot less desk space is going to be taken up by this because it's going to be tall rather than extending far out. In terms of installing cooler like this is a far easier case to install, this cooler, than the Fractal Torrent Nano. I can actually see what I'm doing. I can shift it different ways a lot easier rather than the power supply thing being in the way. On that case, this is nice and open. I actually don't kind of like it. I really like it. So what am I talking about the Fractal Torrent Nano? What I don't like about it? For the cooler itself on this particular case, I'm hitting here and I have to mangle things up, denting in order to fit my cooler properly. Not what I want to do. That just ruins it. Now, how about the front of this case here? How do you remove that? Well, I'll give this a tug, and that's how we remove it. First time I tried moving this, just that makes it a lot more convenient for installing when I can actually access that space back here underneath my large cooler. Right now I want to get these cables all tidied up. I probably don't want to overlap them. We don't have much room at all for running any sort of cables. So I'm going to try to straighten this out, make it as flat as possible, and spread them out a little There we go. Now I'm going to put this in the side to see if this fits. Nice. That actually fits. Here I have an SSD drive, and I'm going to use the same screws as for mounting the motherboard itself. And to take this off, I just remove this screw right here. Now I can take this off and start mounting. And of course I won't have my connections this way. Don't want it towards the screws. Like the screw right here. I don't want it that way. I want it the opposite way so I can actually access my ports. And for now I'm just doing this all loosely so I can actually get my screws snug after it's all lined up. Otherwise I might be fighting with one of these. And now I can place it back. Just like that. Now it's time to pretty much get my power supply connected so I can connect to my different things. So it looks like my power supply is going to be installed like so. Fan here and screws in here. And this is only an extension cable to the outside of the case. This is not a real power plug. You have to use your power supply's power plug. Connect here. Then we're going to Velcro across the top like so. So I'm going to open these. And strap them in. And now to go along the back, and keep on strapping these in. And luckily the top is going to cover that. So our top is right here. Let's flip it over. Once I have the side case on, this will look more normal, but we can see right here the power cables goes out the back, like so. In retrospect, installing the cooler later on would have been the much better idea, because it takes a lot of room for these cables to go through, especially if an SFXL, you'd really want that extra room of not having cooler in the way. Get that slack out, and then you can cut this end after. See? Tidies that up there. Now if you're wondering about this cooler that has a little bit like a centimeter of clearance to the side of the case, this is a Noctua NF-A12x25 It's over top down cooler. The heat sink is 115 millimeters. That is with a fan, we're talking about 140 millimeters. With a centimeter to spare is 150 millimeters total height, as long as we don't put a side case fan at all. Not liking it facing this way, it has to face a different way. So I can put some fans right on the front of the case and make it look really cool. But this cooler is massive. Here's my new SI100 cooler from Thermalright. We see a nice gap here, but hopefully I can fit my nice RGB RAM sticks underneath here. Specs of the gap are totally missing on Thermalright's site. Comes with this particular fan. I am of course going to be replacing that with a high airflow pressure fan most likely. How is the fan anyways? Super silent at low RPMs, if that matters to you. I'm actually impressed that way. However, air pressure is very low for what it is, but a super great value CPU cooler. Now what can fit underneath that? Well, let's get to what RAM I'm using in this case and how much room there is. G.SKILL Z5 Neo RGB, and the memory timings are listed right here. It's cast latency 30, 38, 38, 96, and this is super fast for AMD systems. And the height is about a maximum of 43 millimeters, and the cooler can fit up to about 45 millimeters max. So this cooler that I'm showing now works perfect. Let's get back to the RGB. So these that you see right here, what are these? Well, I'll show you right away. Here are some fans that would work. The disadvantage of these fans is they all have 3 different fan headers that attach to your motherboard, which means you can control it, which means you can control the temperatures with the radiator and everything else. Really nice to have. And it has RGB. And that's a particular type of RGB support. MSI, Mystic Light support. If you have that on your motherboard and RGB headers, this will work. Not with all motherboards. This one has more fan blades, more air pressure, better with a case that has restricted airflow. This is the outer material you see of the case, and the material behind that is this very, very, very fine mesh. And I know what you're thinking. Maybe you want something fancier for your front case fans? Well, you can try the Corsair QX series QX120 RGB cooling fans 3-pack with hub. And these are new and fancy fans that we can see here. Review coming soon, so watch for that. And how about some other fans? Right here we have the Lee & Lee Unifan SL120 Infinity. Watch for this review coming soon as well. All paid with my own money for your pleasure. You will definitely need fans here. That's why a lot of people probably suggest is get the case with the fans for the best value. However, those aren't always the best fans to use. Do we notice this is black? The front of the case. What color is dust? Wait, white? Oh wait, we're going to have white rings around here of dust eventually. Now what you could do, recommendation-wise in terms of looks, if you want your RGB, is have RGB at the front and have lots of airflow. This bracket on the side here will allow for 3 120 millimeter fans or 2 140 millimeter fans with no space for another 120 here, sadly. However, this blows air directly on our CPU cooler and basically over our memory modules as well. And that's going to prevent white dust rings. I have the RGB left on, the fans turned off. Up to you what you want to do, because if it gets dusty here, it's not going to be as obvious. What I love is it's magnetic. I have a bunch of different magnetic devices. If you have a Wi-Fi antenna like I do, that's magnetic. A very nice way to tidy things up and leave it into place. So this case is kind of a mixed bag for me. The cables at the back, of course, as we know, the display port is kind of tight. I still consider it acceptable, barely, but it's going to work just fine. I like how the cables are basically hidden out the back and out the bottom. Out of sight, out of mind. We got the USB up here from your header of your motherboard. And that's perfect. It takes advantage of your ports. Awesome. If this is too bright, don't connect your LED header and don't have any lights at the front and be done with it. Lastly, what is another problem you could end up having? Well, you might have noticed that your case might be tippy and the top's not staying on properly. If that happens, just flip this side to this side and this side to that side and it'll be perfect. Because the case itself, for some reason, when flipped either or, does not fit quite properly. So hopefully that'll help you. If you have any questions, leave them below, because I cannot help you if you don't ask the questions. And I do answer questions. It could be months later, it could be years later, and I'll still help you on my videos, because I actually can see years later if you comment. This is Eric of Not BIOS Tech and Reviews. Thanks for watching and have yourselves a most wonderful day.